Hello students, this is Veena, Assistant Professor in the Department of English, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. Today we are going to learn about language acquisition and its process. Whichever language you learn, what is the process of its acquisition? What is the criteria and what are the rules which we have to learn to make the language acquisition possible? Especially when it comes to your English language, it is very essential to know the basic rules and the basic structures in the way to understand this language. Unless you do not understand the ground level rules and the criteria and also the structure and the grammar of the language, you will unable to understand this language properly. So, the process of language acquisition is the most important entity in the way to build up your communication in that particular language. So, let us try to understand the language acquisition process of English under your definitions and terminology. And what is that terminology and what are those definitions which are relevant to this language acquisition process? Let us try to understand and discuss them in detail. Let us get started. Here, what is your language acquisition? How is that we are going to understand the process of language acquisition? The process of attaining a specific variant of human language. There are n number of languages. Then, to understand a specific variant, that means a specific language of humans, we are trying to acquire and develop that capability to understand it with all the sensibility, with all the meaning and understanding. So, acquiring the language along with the senseful understanding, decoding the sense and also trying to answer or respond to that particular language in the way of communicating to others is your language acquisition process. Why is that important? Language acquisition is very important in terms of making ourselves communicate to the others. Of course, though we have our mother tongue, we are trying to learn some more new languages in the way to make our communication more better and move out of the box of the area, and on the level of international platform, we can stand such that we acquire the common language, acquisition of common language, which will build the rapport and interaction with people around the world. We are trying to learn English language, as English has been set as the global language and the common language on the international arena. The process of learning a native or a second language. Now, acquisition takes place when it is in the process of your native language. Of course, you acquire your language, that is your mother tongue, since childhood through the rapid conversations or the very frequent conversations you do from childhood. It is very usual to you to learn and talk in your mother tongue. Because of that, more usage of the language and the frequent use of the language and the way you are listening to it, it is helping you to acquire the language easily. But when it comes to your second language, how is that you are going to acquire it? What are those basic rules and criteria which you have to enhance or inbuild in yourself to make your language acquisition possible and authentic? Language acquisition is a complex unconscious process. It is a complex unconscious process, and there are many nature versus nurture theories as to how we actually acquire a first language. Try to understand the terminology which is associated with this word language acquisition. It is a complex unconscious process, very difficult, because in the way of acquiring a knowledge of a language, we must be able to also acquire the knowledge about its grammatical structures, about its patterns, its syntax, syntax, its phonology, in all the very useful information which needs us to develop that particular language and learn that particular language. Just knowing the alphabet is not enough. It is very essential to understand and decode the rules of that language in the way to make your language efficient and also accurate and qualitative. There are many nature versus nurture theories as to how we actually acquire a first language, that is naturally and in the way of learning process. Nurturing is polishing yourself into that particular arena, polishing yourself to learn a new language. Naturally, you will learn your mother tongue. No one will teach you in the way of conversations, the way you talk to your parents, the way you converse with your family members, the way you talk to your relatives. In all those cases, you will be able to understand your mother tongue commonly, and also you will be able to converse within no time. But when it comes to second language, it is very, very important for you all to know the acquisition rules. How is that you are going to learn such that you can decode the meaning properly and rightly from that element and again respond it in that particular language. There are stages to natural language acquisition. For natural language acquisition, there are some stages. Now, what are they? Let us try to understand through this topic analysis. As babies will learn to sound and start to produce single words, then combined words, use morphemes, work out syntax, then build and refine vocabulary and grammar, while all the while improving our fluency and proficiency. Here, once since your childhood, it is not that you will just talk in long, lengthy sentences at a time. It is a process. It is a stage-wise process. First, you will be able to speak out single words. Then you will be able to use the compound words. Then you will be able to produce the syntax, the sentence structures, refining your vocabulary and grammar, what you learn. So this happens stage by stage. It cannot be acquired with one time, once. No, not at a time you are just listening to them and speaking out. No, you will first try to learn the single words, then compound words, then build simple sentences, then gradually developing your vocabulary, you will be able to use more number of words in the way of making them into complex sentences and also build up the paragraphs and the sentences. So that is the way you are going to learn your language. By improving your fluency and vocabulary. Improving your fluency and vocabulary is also not an easy task. It develops and it happens with rigorous practice, and it since years, the lot of practice, the way you communicate with others, all that will be coming into the context in the process of making your fluency and pronunciation effective. Then, what is the definition of language acquisition? What is its terminology? Let us try to understand. Language acquisition is the process by which humans acquire the capacity to perceive and comprehend language. That is, the humans will try to understand, perceive is to learn, and to comprehend that language. It is a process where we are trying to understand and use that language. In other words, gain the ability to be aware of language and to understand it, as well as to produce and use words and sentences to communicate. So, language acquisition is a process where we are trying to learn a language and also use the language effectively, qualitatively, with good vocabulary, fluency and pronunciation. That is what is your language acquisition process. Second, language learning is usually an intentional process. Now, learning English language is the second language learning process, isn't it? That is intentionally. You have some purpose to learn that particular second language. That is the reason you are learning this language. While your mother tongue, without any purpose, by birth, you will try to learn it, acquire command over it, and become fluent over the mother tongue. But when it comes to your second language acquisition, it happens with the purpose. Intentionally, you will try to learn that language such that it will serve your purpose for the future usage. And learned based on the supposed command of a first language that accompanies the learners. That is, and learner based on the command. Whatever mother tongue base you have, you will try to put forward that command also and try to understand this language in the way of making your communication more effective. Acquisition does, however, follow a similar pattern of. Now, language acquisition happens through one particular pattern. Let us try to understand what is this pattern. Both in the way of your mother tongue acquisition or your second language acquisition, the process is similar. Now, let us try to understand the definitions of the terminology which we use in this language acquisition. 1. Pre-production. What is this pre-production in language acquisition? Observe new language through listening. That is, through the listening process, we will observe the new language. That is pre-production. Early production. Observe new language, produce short words and sentences. We are observing the language. We are producing short single words. That is production, early production acquisition of our language. Then speech emergence. Speech emergence is the emergence of the speech, the sentences. Produce longer sentences on familiar topics. Use more vocabulary. Make less errors. Then intermediate fluency. Speak fairly fluent in social or regular situations, can analyze and offer an opinion. New situations are problematic. There are language gaps. Then advanced fluency. Communicate fluency with an accent on most subject with occasional idiomatical mistakes. So, these are all the words, this is all the terminological pattern which is involved in the language acquisition. So, this is the stepwise process where you acquire a language, where you build the command over the language. In order to speak a language, as adults do, children need to have acquired 5 areas of linguistic competence. Now, in order to gain that confidence over the language, whichever you are learning, whether it is your mother tongue or the second tongue, you must have command over these 5 elements of that language. Now, what are those 5 elements? One is phonology, lexis, semantics, grammar and pragmatics. These are the 5 areas which one has to master to acquire the language learning. That is, to learn a language, to gain acquisition over a language, one must be very aware, keen and must be enthusiastic in making and knowing the awareness of all these 5 elements in your language acquisitions. Now, let us try to understand each one of them in detail. Phonology. What is phonology? What is the definition and what is the terminology which we use in the phonology? Phonological development is the acquisition of sounds in order to pronounce words. That is, acquisition of sounds, the pronunciation of the alphabets, acquisition of the sounds, the sounds which we produce through our vocal cords, the way we pronounce the words or the alphabet of that particular language is dealt with this phonology. Child language acquisition begins at birth, isn't it? A human being starts learning the language since his birth. And what are the stages? Basic biological noises. He learns from 0 to 8 weeks. Cooing and laughing, 8 to 20 weeks. Vocal play. approximately 20 to 30 weeks, babbling approximately 25 to 50 weeks, then melodic utterances approximately 36 to 72 weeks. See, the language acquisition process begins from the childhood. So, from the childhood, we are very much in that process of learning the language. So, it must not be difficult for us to learn some new language also, because we already are equipped of that process where we can become good, effective language speakers. So, when you are trying to learn your second language, try to accept and adopt the same means. You first try to understand the alphabets, try to learn the sounds of the alphabet, and then go with the semantics, the meanings, the lexicality, the structures, the grammar, and whatever it comes into the way of language acquisition process of that second language, particularly English. Then, what is lexis? Lexical development is the acquisition of words. The way you learn the words, the way you acquire the knowledge of the words is your lexis. That is, classified children first 50 words as, now most of the time the first 50 words could be for children are naming things or people. In the first stage, children will try to name the things or the people who are around them. Maybe ball, daddy, juice, milk. These are all some examples. Then actions or events. Down, more, up, below, beneath, in. So they will try to learn the positions. These are the positional words. Then the action or events, then describing or modifying things. Then they will try to learn dirty, nice, beautiful, sweet, hot. All these stuff they will start learning. Personal or social words. Bye-bye, good morning, hello. All these words come under the personal or social words. So gradually, step by step, we learn like this our language. Then in the same way, we can apply it to your second language acquisition too. Then semantics. We will talk about the semantics in the language acquisition. Now, what is the definition of this semantics? Semantic development is the acquisition of the meaning of the words. That is, not just learning the words, acquiring, knowing the meaning of the words is your semantic development. How well you are trying to understand the meaning of the word will be in a very effective process through this semantic development. Children tend to use words more broadly than adults, and overextensions and underextensions are found to be produced. That is, how is that we are using the words? Do we really know the meaning of the words? And is that word which we used is rendering the same message what I know to the other person? So, semantic development is the most important process in the language acquisition. So, once you start learning language, you have to understand and gain command over the semantics of the words. That is, you must be able to know the meaning of the words so that you can communicate effectively. Because once, if you do not know the meaning of the word, you cannot converse confidently. If you know the meaning, you have that confidence of using the word rightly, and then you can use it correctly. These features of semantic development are crucial in gaining meaning and understanding of the words. So, why is that we are asking you to learn the process of semantic development? That is, we are trying to make you understand, realize the importance of the thing of semantics, the meaning and the real understanding of the word. There are n number of synonyms to one particular word, but when you are using them in your conversation, you must be rightly knowing the meaning of the word. If you do not know the meaning of the word and you are using it in the way of your communication, then you will be in a very problematic situation, because if you are using a wrong word for that particular situation which it does not suit, you will be taken as a misunderstanding. It will be taken as a misunderstanding. So, we must be very careful enough when we are using the words. Then, grammar or syntax. Very, very important in the language acquisition process. The structure of the sentences, the tenses, the speeches, the past, present, and the active voices, the passive voices, all these things are very, very important in the way of developing your language acquisition of particularly English language. There are three main stages of grammatical development. Now, this grammatical development happens in three stages. What are those stages? Holophrastic stage, that is from 12 to 18 months. The holophrastic stage consists of children learning and producing single word utterances that function as phrases or sentences. This is the stage where children learn and produce single words in the first stage. Then two-word stage. The two-word stage comprises a child using, quite obviously, as stated in the title, two words to form a sentence. Baby chair, mommy eat, and cat bad are all examples of some utterance of, that means they'll be trying to use two words like compound words to express their feeling or whatever they are trying to tell it to you. Next, telegraphic stage, that happens in 2 to 3 years. The telegraphic stage is when have acquired and start to use multiple word utterances, when it is in the process of uttering the multiple words. Then when they are trying to make sentences, maybe the simple sentences, this stage. At this stage, some of the children utterances are grammatically correct. Sometimes in the flow, while talking to their parents, while talking to their grandparents or their cousins or their siblings, they will automatically learn to speak right sentences with right structural formats. Amy likes tea. Now subject, verb, object, the right structure. Then Teddy looks tired. Subject, verb, adjective. Mommy sleeps upstairs. Subject, verbs, adverbial. Unknowingly, in the process of learning new words, in the process of conversations, in the process of communicating with people a number of times, this will be developed and this will be understood by the people, and they will automatically use to deliver the right structural sentences in the language acquisition process. Then pragmatics. Now, what is the definitions of pragmatics and the role in the English language acquisition? Pragmatic development highlights children's motivation to acquire language in the first place, as it serves different purposes and functions. Now, what is the purpose? Why is that the child is trying to learn the language more effectively? This stage is this is what is defined for this pragmatics. Pragmatics aren't acquired immediately, nor does it take a short period of time for a child to acquire them. This process is ongoing until the age approximately 10 years. That is, they are trying to learn new words. They are trying to put forward simple sentences. They are trying to write some paragraph. They are trying to elaborate the explanation what they are doing in the form of conversations. So, language acquisition is a continuous process. It does not happen just within a day or two. It has to be gradually improved stage by stage and with proper acquisition in the format which it is required. Then only one can learn and acquire the language effectively and qualitatively. Now, classified functions of language as being. Now, how is that your language is classified and what are the uses it can happen? Instrumental. Now, when your language is instrumental, what is that you do for? To express needs. Then, to control behavior of others, you will be regulatory. Interaction, to relate to others. Heuristic, to gain knowledge of the environment. Personal, to express yourself. Imaginative, to use language imaginatively. Informative, to convey facts and information. So, these are the functions which your language helps you to cater or to fulfill the action. Then, what is the significance of language learning and its acquisition? Why someone has to have interest to learn English language or any other second language? Because mother tongue is since our childhood. Why is that we are trying to tell you that language acquisition is the most important process which you all have to remember and also practice in the way of developing your communication and relating it to the people while you are communicating. Now, language learning and its acquisition plays a vital role in our society. Language teaching in a classroom involves interaction among the learners and the teachers. There is a classroom with students of different languages. Now, the teacher has to choose a common language to address all these students. In that area, we are trying to put forward and make you understand something in a common language which can be addressed to everyone. There the role of the second language plays. So it is very important, and the second language acquisition is also very important to make your conversations and make your relations and develop that conversation around you. The aim is to bring a change in the learner. That is not just sticking to one region, one area. We are trying to make you to get exposed to the entire world. So to make you exposed to the entire world and to communicate with all the people, you must be able to know and learn a new language which will cater the needs of your communication with them. Language teaching does not operate in isolation from other aspects of life. If we view second language teaching in its totality, we find that it is very complex task indeed. Of course, second language acquisition is a complex task, but your zeal, your enthusiasm, your interest and your purpose, specifically the purpose for which you are learning, must be addressed. Then only you will be able to have that interest over the thoughts to acquire that particular language. In order to understand the nature of this complex task, it is necessary to approach it in a systematic manner. So, to acquire any language, you are trying to go step by step and you are going to achieve the goal of its acquisition in a very logical and sequencing order. You cannot become clumsier. First you learn sentence, then go back to learn alphabets. No. First, you have to know about the alphabets, then you have to know and have the awareness over the sounds, then you must be able to add single words, then compound words, then develop simple sentences, then maybe able to converse in 2 or 3 sentences. Like this, in a way of a systematic manner, you can acquire the language. Measuring tools and rubrics for language acquisition. Now, what are the measuring tools for your language acquisition? Measuring language acquisition is not easy as it's measuring distance or weight. Now, how is that you are going to measure it? Language knowledge is not directly accessible, and we rely on learners to display their knowledge in some way so that it can be measured. Now, how is that we are going to measure? It cannot happen as you're measuring your height or something like that. It can happen only through the practice and the way of some exercises which can taken up. Now these exercises, for that reason, we can develop some rubrics and we can assign some number or the mark for each level of acquisition process such that we can evaluate the language learning process. Now, some of the strategies that parents and teachers can use to support children in learning to express themselves, to hear and understand language and to become competent communicators. What is that they are doing? Build relationships. Now, how is that your language acquisition is possible? What are the strategies which you can adopt for yourself in making your language acquisition possible? 1. Building relationships. You must be able to build the relationships around you. You must be able to converse with the people. You must be able to see that they are able to understand your language. If not, you have to practice more and bring more improvements. Try to add more number of meanings and meaningful words to your vocabulary such that you can use it in your communication process. Be an empathetic language partner. So in the process of building relationship with others, be an empathetic learner. That is, try to put yourself in the place of your listener and try to understand, decode and encode the message, and also try to observe how they are talking, the way they are pronouncing, the accent of the people, such that you can meet the needs of that language acquisition in that process. Respond and take turns. You must be able to respond to the other person, and also in the way of communication, you must be able to do interaction between one to the other. Respond to non-verbal communication. You must be able to respond to non-verbal communication too, because it's not possible to talk always. It may be the body language, it may be the sign language sometimes you use in the way of your communication. Now, how is that you're going to use it successfully to render your information or your message is very, very important. Use the 4 E's approach. Now, what are these 4 E's which will help you in making your language acquisition more elegant and vibrant? Encourage children to communicate by listening, responding, and not correcting their language. So, encourage. Our first E is encourage. Try to encourage yourself. Try to encourage people around you in the way of communication. Then, elaborate. Encourage, elaborate is explain the need and the purpose of the language. Extend the sounds, words, have the awareness and create that knowledge over the words and the sounds or the accent and the intonation of that language which you are trying to learn. Expand on both semantics and the syntax of child's words and conversational turns. Try to expand both the meaning and the grammatical structure of the sentences in the way of your communication. It is very, very essential to have and know all these steps in the way of making your language acquisition possible and also qualitative. So, apart from your mother tongue, it is very, very important to follow all these rules in the way of acquiring your English language learning. Try to have an eye over the words what you are using. Try to understand the real meaning of the words what you are using in the way of communication. Try to have that grammatical structure awareness while using or building the sentences in your written communication as well as in your verbal communication. It is very, very essential to use sensible words, sensible sentences which will rightly generate the accurate message to the people who are listening to you or who are reading your message. Now, language acquisition is learned through focused, conscious study. Now, how is that happens? It happens with better comprehension. What is better comprehension? It is better understanding of the language. And how will that be developed? It will be developed with a lot of practice and the awareness which you will have over the phonology, the semantics, the lexical words and the grammatical structures of the language. Then, improved capacity to acquire new vocabulary. The process of acquiring the right vocabulary which suits your conversation is very, very important, and your capacity in building more number of new words to add to the dictionary of your language is also a part of making your language acquisition process effective. And more vocabulary. You should not confine yourself with some words. Try to add more number of vocabulary. It doesn't mean that you have to read so many words or do some homework. More conversation, communicating with people every time. Try to observe what are the words, how is that they are communicating, and what is the accent or the pronunciation used by the people who are conversing with you. So, if you have good attention and interest over learning the language, you can put forward your work through learning all this stuff from the others. Now, I would like to conclude saying that try to learn new languages such that they become base for more better communication in your professional and your workplaces. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.